Hey guys, welcome back to Main Street Living. Now, Danielle, we already know April is Earth Month, and since 72% of the Earth is covered by the oceans, the home sweet home for marine life is clearly something we need to focus our attention on, right?
72%. Why is it called Earth? It should just be called ocean at that point. It's more ocean than it is Earth. Fortunately, our next guest comes from a family that is legendary for promoting the preservation of the oceans. Please welcome in Philippe Cousteau. Philippe, thank you for joining us on Main Street Living.
Well, thanks for having me. Delighted to be here.
So as Quincy mentioned, we are celebrating Earth Month or Ocean Month, however you look at it. But the oceans need our attention all year long. How are our oceans looking in 2022?
Well, unfortunately, Danielle, things are not looking that great. The ocean, as you pointed out, is over 70% of our planet, and yet is oftentimes overlooked as really the system that drives our climate, that is and thus responsible for our weather and the rain for our crops. That the ocean is really the life support system of Earth. And as you pointed out, it certainly should be called Planet Ocean, not Planet Earth. But regardless, the oceans are in a bad way. Not surprisingly, overfishing and plastic pollution, amongst other pollution, climate change, warming sea temperatures, rising sea levels. It's a litany of bad news that I'm sure most of your listeners see on the news, viewers see on the news and read about. But there is good news, and I know we're going to get to that. So it's not all doom and gloom.
Okay, good.
Yeah, well, you co-founded something called EarthEcho. Okay, I know there's so many things that are going on that are changing in the Earth's climate, but what is the goal of that organization?
Well, my grandfather, Jacques Cousteau, was a big inspiration, as you can imagine, on my life, as was my father, Philippe Sr. And, towards the end of his life in particular, he spoke often about the importance of education. And I think he recognized that if we're going to create the kind of social and economic and political change that we need to build a better world, that we need to start with young people and build a generational movement. And so 16 years ago, I founded EarthEcho International, where we've become a leading global environmental education organization, and we're building the global youth movement to restore and protect the ocean. And it's really what gives me hope. I mean, as I listed some of the bad news, the good news is that we have a generation of young people that are fired up, that are engaged, that are optimistic and determined to do things differently. And when I was in high school, we had, like the recycling club, but now we have young leaders around the world, from Africa to South America to the United States, Australia, the UK, Europe, who are passing laws, raising huge sums of money, protecting large tracts of land, leading political movements in their communities and in their countries. And so we're seeing a level of sophistication on the part of young people that is truly extraordinary.
Well, for those of us who are maybe not as young, Philippe, and for those who are young, what are some ways that viewers can help our oceans, even if they don't live by one? I think sometimes out of sight, out of mind. Even if you don't live by an ocean, there's a way to help.
Well, absolutely. Out of sight, out of mind is definitely one of the problems that we face. Our lives, no matter who we are, no matter where we live, are impacted by the ocean every single day. As I pointed out, one example, the oceans regulate our climate, thus our weather, thus the rainfall of our crops. I was giving a speech in Missouri just a few weeks ago at a university and was talking to them, listen, the rainfall and the crops of corn and wheat here is driven by the ocean. So we certainly, whether we live on the ocean or not, have a lot to thank for the ocean. So what can we all do? Well, first of all, recognize that we have power in this country in our vote, right? That's very, very important. We have midterm elections coming up. We're not just talking presidential elections. We need to break down the partisanship around conservation and ocean protection in particular between Republicans and Democrats that's kind of plagued this country for a few decades. We need to move beyond that and recognize all of us have an interest in a healthy ocean and a thriving ocean. In addition, we can think about the things that we buy, from the clothing, maybe stay away from the disposable fast fashion that is one of the biggest polluters on Earth. We can think about the cars that we drive and the energy that we use, that's contributing to climate change that is having such an impact on the ocean. So we can think about, the cleaning products that we use in our home, that we go down our drains, go down our toilet, and thinking about how we can buy products that are more sustainable, that are more restorative, and that don't have such a heavy polluting impact on the environment.
Wow. Well, Philippe, you're definitely giving us a lot of information, but we also have the CEO of Newday Impact Investing here to tell us all about how you and others can put your money to work for causes that we care about. Let's welcome Doug Heskey to the show. How you doing, Doug?
I am doing great, and thank you so much for having us this morning.
No problem. Welcome to Main Street. Doug, can you give us a quick explanation of what ESG investing is and how Newday Impact Investing fits into that?
Yeah, of course. So environmental, social, and governance investing, otherwise known as ESG, is a framework from which people can make really good investment decisions to invest in some of the world's most sustainably friendly companies. So that is the core of the work that we do at Newday Impact. We are an institutional asset manager that is building investment portfolios around some of these really important issues, things like ocean health and clean water, wildlife conservation, diversity, equity, and inclusion. But even more importantly, Newday is identified as a collective action platform. So what we try to do is to bridge what is this chasm between awareness and action. We want people of all generations, younger people, older people, going out and actually not just putting their capital behind these really important efforts, but thinking differently about how they conduct themselves, their behavior, the responsible things that Philippe was just referencing in terms of how you run your life on a day-to-day basis.
Nice.
Well, Doug and Philippe, obviously full of valuable information. So we want to get more from you guys if you guys can stick around. And for viewers, don't go anywhere. We will dive a little bit deeper with Doug and Philippe next, right here on Main Street Living. Hey there, and welcome back into Main Street Living. Now, as you know, we are celebrating Earth Day all month long, which I'm officially deeming as Ocean Day because it's 72% of the planet. Please welcome back in Philippe Cousteau and CEO of Newday Impact Investing, Doug Heskey. So, Doug, what inspired your organizations to partner with each other?
Yes. Well, thank you for that question. This, I want to also highlight, this is not just an important week with Earth Day coming up on Friday, but we're coming up on World Oceans Day on June 8th, and I think World Reef Day on June 1st. So it's a really important time for us to all be thinking about the work that we can be doing to support our oceans and ecosystems. So in answer to your question, we operate in a world today where there are those who cling to what is, and those with the vision and imagination to see where we can go. Not only that, but the courage and conviction to lead the way. And certainly Philippe Cousteau, the work of EarthEcho can be clearly defined as that. They are sending a message of hope to a lot of younger people today that are working actively to repair our ecosystems. And we want to get not just younger people, but all people involved in doing that. So when we started our organization, it was built around this idea of authenticity. And certainly there is a lot of criticism today that's been built around environmental, social, and governance investing, which, as I said earlier, is a framework to make great investment decisions, but it is not necessarily impact. So what is impact is what you do with your shareholder or your stakeholder voice. And that's critically important. We as an organization are both advocates and activists. We take 5% of our revenues and drive those revenues back to organizations like EarthEcho International so that they can continue to do the work that they and only they can do from a grassroots perspective. This is so critically important. So we found a partner in EarthEcho because they are very focused on ocean literacy, very focused on the younger generation, which is also an area that we are keenly focused on. And they're an organization that makes things happen.
Yeah, nice. Make it happen there, Philippe, right?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I appreciate that, Doug. And I say the same about Newday and what you all are doing. I mean, that leadership role, because let's face it, there's a lot of uncertainty in this world. There's a lot of things that we don't know. But there is one thing that we do know, and that there are solutions and that we can build a better world. And what that's going to take, though, and I mentioned this earlier, is moving all in the same direction. And so what that means is we need the tools in order to recognize how we invest our resources. Financial resources, very, very important. Financial markets are, $30 trillion. I mean, this country, it's an enormous amount of money. It's not just enough to recycle and to, support a nonprofit. We need to be thinking about where we invest our dollars. We need to think about who we vote for. We need to think about all those different elements of our behavior. And Newday is a terrific tool, and why EarthEcho is thrilled to be a partner with them to help people do that and make better decisions about how they invest their money. We also believe in restoration. I think one of my main message today is that we need to mobilize capital. We need to mobilize all of our different choices in our lives to restore the world, and we can do that. Enough with sustainability. We don't want to sustain an ocean where 90% of the world's fisheries are fish to capacity or overfished. Half the world's coral reefs are collapsing. Climate change is running forward pell-mell. I think what we need to be thinking about is restoration, not sustainability. And the good news is I've seen examples all over the world when we give nature a chance, when we set areas aside, when we invest in conservation and restoration, it works. And so there are tools in our arsenal at our disposal to build a better world. That's the fundamental message I think we need to be focusing on now, and that the ocean needs to be at the center of that conversation. Everybody talks about planting trees, restoring forests, and that's very, very important. But I'll give you one interesting stat. 1 square acre of mangroves, coastal forests, absorb more carbon than a square acre of rainforest. So looking at ocean ecosystems, which is the largest carbon cycle on Earth, and understanding how to restore the ocean and return the ocean to abundance is going to be our greatest ally in combating climate change. It's all too often overlooked. We need to recognize the oceans are our greatest tool in building a hopeful, restorative future.
So restoration is possible. It's not too late.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask, Philippe, in the first segment, you mentioned that you were related to the great Jacques Cousteau, and I can see the passion that both you and Doug have for saving the world. But is that what inspires you, knowing that you have that in your bloodline?
Yeah, growing up with his stories, with his adventures, traveling, was a huge inspiration to me. And he always told us that we have this extraordinary opportunity to see the world and to see all these things. And with that comes a responsibility. With power comes responsibility, the old adage, and as it goes. And he was a big believer in that responsibility. And I do believe myself that, it's the best job in the world. We get to travel and go on adventures and explore the world, and then share that with others and work to inspire others to protect the world and not just keep it to ourselves. So he was a big part of that inspiration for me, and his continued drive to innovate and solve problems and be eternally optimistic, even in the face of a lot of the bad news that cascades down around us these days, and to find the good news, as I've endeavored to do in this conversation, and share with you all that there is hope, and there are good things happening. We have solutions. We just need the will to enact them.
Yeah, and I love what you touched on there with the responsibility and how it's on all of us. You've kind of already touched on this a little bit, but maybe Doug, you can expand on this, how where we spend our money can actually influence the oceans in a positive way. How does that sustainable investing kind of improve the oceans and the climate in general?
Yeah, I think that this is so critically important. I just returned with my family from Costa Rica, and we had an opportunity to actually get out into some of those mangrove coastal areas. And one of my sons asked me, why isn't it like this in the US? Here you have in Costa Rica a government that's incredibly supportive to environmentalism and ecotourism. And when we get organizations from the top down, governments, corporate organizations, academic institutions, even faith-based institutions working together to solve these problems, there's a lot that can occur. This idea that climate change and social cohesion are a collective action problem, a consequence of shared behaviors that cut really deeply into how we live, work, and play in modern life, demands a different level of action from all of us and all of those constituents that I had previously mentioned. The paradox today is that people at the forefront of climate impact, at least in their own minds, are rarely the people that have contributed much to climate change through their small carbon footprint. So we have to get these larger institutions, governments, and corporate organizations affecting change. What can we do as individuals, as responsibly minded individuals and citizens? We need to be using our voices to get out there and drive for transformational change through political activism and some of the things that we were talking about earlier. Critically important today.
Money talks as well. Yes. I think that's the old adage rings true. Money talks, and we need to be mobilizing the markets and the trillions of dollars in those markets to build this kind of restorative, better world, and not just maintain the status quo, which is quite literally killing us.
Yeah, and we think about this. This is a super important adage that we have adopted in our lexicon that was coined by Philippe and his family, right? That we want a seat at both tables. There's $500 billion each year that's given towards philanthropy in the US, but the investment market globally is 60, 70 trillion dollars. Even if we were just to capture a small percentage of that, we can have an enormous impact, which is why we do the work that we do. So we have an ocean health strategy that we are partnered on with EarthEcho International. And the more assets that we accumulate in that strategy, the more charitable contributions get driven back towards ocean health.
Awesome. Well, the information that you guys have provided today, I'm sure is going to help a bunch of people look a little bit deeper, into saving this world and saving the ocean. So thank you both, Doug and Philippe, for being part of the show today.
Wonderful. Danielle, thanks for having us. It was terrific.
Well, we need to go to break. And speaking of break, we're not taking a break from these oceans, Danielle, because we're about to take a peek at Rhode Island seals. Stay right there. You don't want to miss it.